Happy Monday. Thank you for joining me for this week's Weekly Wisdom. Now, there was a phrase that I've heard recently. It feels like it's got really good timing. And the phrase is to be on purpose. What does that mean? When I think of to be on purpose, it means determining who I am and how I want to show up and then purposefully showing up that way. And when you focus on being on purpose, then the difficult stuff, while it doesn't get easy, it gets easier because then you know what to do. So an example, a long time ago, if you've been in my equity, diversity, and inclusion classes, you've heard the full story, but we're not going to go into the full story here. But a long time ago, I made a mistake. I said something to a person that I shouldn't have said it to. And it was out of just ignorance. I didn't know better. There was no ill intent. There was no hate behind it. I just didn't know better. And I saw the look on that person's face, and I swore in that moment that I would never make that mistake again. I was going to be on purpose. I was going to show up on purpose. And as I discovered more about what it meant to live on purpose and in purpose, specifically in this realm, the word anti-racism didn't exist then. But that was something that I was trying to understand. And I went through all of the white privilege guilt and all of the bad feelings and all of the, well, I've had a hard life, all of the things, like the steps and the processes and all of the things that we have to go through to grow in this area. And when I would find myself in difficult situations where a friend would say something that was inappropriate, or a parent would say something that was inappropriate, I would go back to, am I on purpose? Knowing what my purpose was, knowing how I wanted to live, that I wanted to be anti-racist, that I wanted to be an ally for all marginalized communities, that I wanted to lean in, and yes, sometimes I'm going to make mistakes, and when I make mistakes, I'm going to apologize and do better next time. That was my purpose. That was being on purpose for me. And so when you think of being on purpose for you, what does that mean? What are the things that you have been taught, maybe as a child, that you wouldn't teach your children because you know better? I believe it was Maya Angelou that said, when we know better, we do better, right? That's what the world is. We are learning. We are doing better because we know better. When we hear jokes or comments or catcalls or any of those things, our hearts are now like, I don't think that's right. But what are we doing beyond that? How are we being on purpose? When I was in the midst of the biggest piece of my struggle, specifically in the anti-racism area, where I was really trying to overcome a lot of things. Growing up in the deep South in Louisiana, I had learned a lot of bad habits. And I was struggling because it was always like, I would see something that would make my brain glitch. Example, interracial couples. Back in the late 1990s, early 2000s, I would see that and my brain would glitch. And the thought was, that's not right. But the second thought was, you know what, they can do what they want to do. It's none of my business. And I had somebody ask me when I was struggling with this, and I was talking to a mentor about some of these thoughts. She asked me, she says, when you have that first thought of that's not right, what happens next? And so I have the second thought of, you know what, let them do what they do. It's none of my business. And she said, exactly. Your first thought is what you have been taught. Your second thought is who you want to be. So I'm going to tell you the same thing if you are, whether you're on the beginning, the middle, think you're at the end, because we know we're never at the end. If you are anywhere on this journey, whether it is trying to be anti-racist, trying to understand the LGBTQ community, trying to understand neurodivergence, any of these areas, if you are trying to understand, your first thought is what you have been taught. Your second thought is who you want to be. Lean into the second thought. Don't define yourself by the first one. Be on purpose. Thank you for joining me for this week's Weekly Wisdom. I hope you enjoyed it, because I enjoyed filming it. Have a wonderful week. Don't forget, you got this. I'll see you next week.